Welcome to Bitcoin Escape Plan. The topic of today's video is Bitcoin's secret signal that no one is talking about. I'll be showing that over on the 4-hour and 1-hour charts today. As always, I like to start off with the 4-hour just to give a reward to anyone who is watching the video earlier. So stick around for me to ramble about that for a little bit, and then I will dive more in depth into the signal, which is actually on the 1-hour and the 4-hour. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for being here. You can go over to bitcoinescapeplan.com, throw in your email, and you're going to get access to all of these emails. I got 2 of them so far. We're going crazy. All right, let's go back into the video. Like and subscribe. You guys are the best. So the 4-hour chart. Actually, there's a lot happening here, and I don't think anyone's really talking about it correctly. So this is over on Wednesday. Wednesday, we broke 90.2K, and as you can see, we did not do it very well. We gave up pretty much all of that and fell down below the 4-hour SMA. We were able to break back above the 4-hour SMA yesterday. That is on Thursday. And we showed a decent amount of strength, but then failed pretty much as soon as we got to the Bollinger Man, and then gave back everything last night, which I think we'll actually go into more on the hourly. I think the hourly gives you more clear signal of why we failed that, because it doesn't really look like there's anything specific that threw us there, other than I don't know what happened to that level. That level was there, and then it disappeared. Disappearing act. Can I do that? Nope. Don't know what happened. Anyways, so that's what we would be looking at is in the immediate future. As you can see, we just had another retest of that super early in the morning over here. And that wicked down to 87.5. 87.5 and 85.8 we talked about in the newsletter, as well as I believe it was 90.4 at the time. But 90.2 is essentially the same Fibonacci pivot. It's just being pulled downward. So what do I think is going to happen in the short term? Right here, as you can see, the 4-hour SMA is starting to curve upward, which is a good thing. But all that really does is, if we continue to retest at 87.5, it just puts another point of confluence with us to potentially rise higher. But as you can see, looking at the 4-hour chart, when it goes up, there's nothing preventing it from going back down. So we're just seeing a lot of chop. This is what I talked about in my price prediction for the end of the year, that we're pretty much just going to chop. And our best case scenario is one more run up to here, up to 94 and 95. But it's not really looking like that at the moment. So let's get into the 1-hour chart, topic of the video, because this is actually what I think most people are missing out on. This is the anchored VWAP tool. So I talk about this a lot on the 4-hour chart, and I will go back to the 4-hour chart after. But to give you context of the 1-hour chart, this is the middle band right here. This is the upper band. We are below the lower band. This is not good. This is not, bullish signals. As you can see, we're at the middle band over in November, even when we start dropping. And then we drop below towards the end of November, below the lowest band. So the 1-hour doesn't scroll back quite as far. But say we get to, so this is March, April. And that's the lower band is what told us that we were done with that immediate price movement, that we were able to get a reclaim at the middle. So that is essentially, that's what we're waiting for right now at this point in December in 2025, is specifically, are we going to reclaim this or just continue to give it up? And I know people want to make charts way more complicated than they are, but that's a tool that I've drawn once. I drew it back at the 2009 point on the chart, and I don't touch it. I never touch it. I just let it tell me what it wants to tell me. And what it wants to tell me now is that price is still struggling to get above it. So this is when we broke down below it over here after reclaiming it towards the beginning of December. But we didn't get far enough to the middle band. We're not even close. These are key monthly levels. So we struggled at these key monthly levels. It is also the anchored volume profile point of control, which actually it looks like that has moved up somehow. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it's just a weird little glitch on the 1 hour. But this is really the point that we're looking at, the Anchored VWAP tool. How do you use the Anchored VWAP tool? What an excellent question. Random person in my head. Where is it? It's I believe it's a forecasting one. I thought it was in here. Let me see. I should know this if I'm showing it to you. Long position. Anchored VWAP. There we go. So volume based. That's what you want to look at. And you pretty much just grab it and then you just drop it on a candle. Like I said, I like to drop it. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I like to drop it on I refer to it as the Elder VWAP. So I literally just went over to 2009 and I just dropped it. Just dropped it over here in one of these earliest candles. Because to me, that's going to show me what I use it for primarily. And I know we're on the monthly chart. We've been jumping around. What I use it for primarily is to understand when the proper bottoms of the cycles are in. Because on the monthly time frame, we interact with it way less often than we do on the 1 hour and the 4 hour. So the monthly time frame specifically, this is 2018. And obviously we peaked in 2017, and the monthly band, not enough information for us to really know what's going on, other than you can see it's rising, and then it starts to flatten out, which is a key sign that we need to be paying attention to. And what are we doing right now? We're rising, we're still rising, and we have not flattened out. So what does this tell us in the immediate term? What it tells us in the immediate term is we haven't necessarily finished yet. We haven't necessarily seen a top yet until this thing has properly started to round out. Once it has properly started to round out, then it'll be obvious that we're starting to careen towards it. My immediate assumption is it's going to climb up to closer to here before we interact with it. Maybe 39K. 39K to 54, I think. I've talked about that a lot. That's I think possibly where we're going to go at the bottom of next year. And just while we're here, we'll take a look at where we are on the monthly SMA at the moment. We're still kissing it, which is still a really bad sign. Let's jump back to the 4 hour chart. So the 4 hour chart, like we were talking about earlier with our key levels, you may recognize this from the 1 hour chart. This is the Anchored VWAP once again, but this is the upper band on the 4 hour chart. So if you see the lower band is way over here. And actually, we don't even really have an instance where we have touched below the upper band in recent history. We have to scroll back all the way to over here in 2023 to see the last time that we interacted with the middle band on the 4 hour chart. And this is all that we go back to over here. This is for January 23. I'm so sorry, I'm not paying for a TradingView at the moment. So that's all I can give you. But if we think about it, what would likely happen prior to this point is I would imagine we were actually below that band in December of 2022, November of 2022, because that's when the Pico bear market was. And even this is getting pulled upward because this chart starts from here. So I don't think that it's completely accurate in this time scale. And I don't really use the 4 hour to study past cycles. Like I said, I use the monthly or the weekly to show me that. I mostly just use it in this to give me mid-cycle interpretation of where we are. So this would have been really, really important in April, and I was talking about it then, a touch of the upper band. And as you can see now, we've spent more time below that upper band than we did in April. So this is a really key signal and indicator. And again, it's in this guy, projection. You go down to Anchored VWAP, you click it, you throw it on this guy, and then it's going to tell you a whole bunch of information about the chart. You can do it for shorter time periods. Like, let's see, if I wanted to be a little crazy, wanted to add it to this guy here. See, now I can get one that's just from that lowest candle. So what is it showing me for how we performed after that lowest candle? So we climbed up above the upper band, which is a good signal. We gave it up. we went all the way past the middle band, and we went all the way down and touched the lower band, and then snapped back in the opposite direction before again giving up the upper band. And as you can see here, so we retest the middle, we have strength, we go back to the top. We stay above, we fail, we drop back below, we make it so we don't touch the middle band again. We have one more punch above, one more punch below, and then we fail at a previous level. This is a Fibonacci pivot level. So not all, this is what I mean. This is why some people have seizures when they look at my chart. There's too much information. What am I reading? What will I wear? Anyway, so what we're seeing right now is a retest on this new anchored VWAP over here to the middle band. I'm going to delete that, but that's just that's giving you a little bit of information on the shorter time frames of what is occurring, but super important. And again, I can just go over to the 1 hour and I don't even have to redraw it. It's already showing me roughly the same thing, just in a different form. That's again the lower band. This is the upper band, middle band rather. So how I would be using this tool in the short term, if I'm thinking about where we are in the Bitcoin cycle at the moment, which you got to be realistic. And let's zoom out again. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. When the weekly chart has spent this much time below the SMA, it's not a good thing. Over here, even in March and April, that's only a 9 to 11 week time period that we're really interacting with the SMA before we're gone. Right now, we've been interacting with it since August. We've been breaking it and chopping back above it since August. That's like the whole third, fourth quarter of the year, basically. Like we've been spending way, way too long below it to a point where it's not even reasonable to assume that it's going to jump back above. Over here, we had kind of a similar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So slightly longer in 2021 that we spent below the weekly SMA before recovering it for that second top at the end of the year. But then as you can see, once we're done, we pretty much give it up and we just stay below it. We stay below it for a long time. And what does it do? It retests it and then it just keeps giving it up. Just keeps going back. So what do we have for 2017? Same thing. Once it's done, it chops for those initial months, which that's where I think we are right now. I think we're right here right now. Is the SMA is going to continue. We're going to chop around it, and then we're just going to give it up, and then we're just going to fail it. We're going to continue to fail it. It's going to be really sad. And there's going to be Hallmark movie songs playing. And everyone's going to be so sad. But that's essentially what we're seeing right now is the SMA is still curving down, which means our best case scenario is if we randomly show strength and break above it. But our more likely scenario is this is going to continue to come down until price is coming close enough to, I think it's here. I think it's right here. I think 96 is really the make or break for the whole year. I've talked about the point between 94 and 96, I think is where this is actually going to get pulled to, where we're actually going to get confirmation of trend, whether we are in a bull market or a bear market. And as you can see, this is already a key level that we tried to get to the last 2 weeks, and we failed. We failed both weeks, which is why the price has been going lower this week, is because we had 2 significant failures at retesting that key level, which again, we can have confirmed over here. This shows us the same information, that we had multiple retests to get to that level and we failed it. And that is what has been pushing us lower. A lot of people like to think that the price is random, or even I'm seeing a lot of comments on my threads lately that I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm just making it up as I go along. And I really don't agree with that because I'm saying the same levels over and over and over. I've been talking about these levels for months. If you have nothing to do with your time and you were scrolling back as far as March and April, I was talking about a lot of these same levels. back then, because they would have been important back then as well. Once you understand how to read the charts, you really you can listen to other people's opinions for entertainment if you want, but you don't really need them in order to have a good understanding of what's actually going to happen to price. Now, did I think in October that we were going to start dropping off a cliff and give back all of the gains of the year in November? No, I didn't. But was I ignoring when we broke the top band of the anchored VWAP? No, I was not. That was not something that I was seeing strength at that point. That's something where I was recognizing, oh shit, we lose that level, we're fucked. We're going to go lower for an extended period of time, and that's where we've been. So I really think a lot of times people will get distracted by the news. They'll get distracted by what's going on with the narrative of Bitcoin, and they forget it's just a financial instrument. It's just a financial instrument. It's a financial instrument that trades 24 hours a day. And after this point over here, now there's option contracts on it. There's futures contracts on it, which is why people can bet on the price in either direction. They can say, I believe the price is going to be at this point by this date. Give me money for it. And when they're wrong, they lose that money. So a lot of the money that would normally just flow into the asset, and it has, after the banking crises in 1922, in 2022, Silvergate and whatever the hell the other one was, Silver Bank. I don't even remember. They both had silver in the title, I believe. But those two banks, Silvergate and whatever the other one was, when those went out of business, you can see this on other charts that have nothing to do with this chart. I'm going to show you. Oh, where the hell is my other list? How do I can't find my other list. I'm so good at trading you guys. This is why I make. What the hell? All right, well. It's not letting me do that, so I'm just going to re-look it up. Okay, why? This is annoying. It's not letting me do this. Okay. Trying to open this chart for you. It does not want me to open that chart for you. Okay, never mind. Anyways, what you would see on the US HPI chart, which I have no clue why that's not showing up right now, is in 2022. That's the first time that we see a spike downward on the housing price index since 2007, 2008. We recovered right after, and then the period of time that we're in right now, which I really wish I could show you. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. We're also seeing a spike down and a slight recovery. So what that's telling me about the overall health of the economy and the market at the moment is we're still just chopping along. We're still just trying our best to maintain relative highs where we are. This is the S&P 500. So as you can see, we're pretty much right at the highs of October. We're very close. We're going to be in a circumstance soon where we're retesting this SMA again. That's something I would definitely watch if I were trading SPY at the moment. But gold is having an inverse reaction, which if you look, so over here, this kind of front ran it a little bit. This is the middle of November, and then it went back to highs, whereas gold was kind of struggling up to that point, or it's been a little bit more lagging. It seems like every other week gold will have a move, whereas the SPY was a little bit more consistent during that time, but did have a significant drop as well. So it's just something to keep in mind for both those assets. When both those assets are still touching new highs, and Granddaddy Bitcoin is performing like this over the same time period, it's not a good and healthy signal for crypto itself. It just is not indicative that the price is randomly going to recover. And I don't even really think that those assets are correlated the same way that people claim that they're correlated anymore. I see a lot of people talking about that online, like, oh, SPY just dropped or gold just dropped, Bitcoin's going to drop. I just don't see it. they were all at relative highs at this point, and they chopped a little bit and continued. You can see it clear as day on the chart. Relative highs, chopped down a little bit, and continued. Relative highs, chopped down a little bit, and continued. Where do you not see that reflected is Bitcoin, dude. Relative highs, chop down, continue to chop down, continue to chop down, continue to chop down. So we just kind of need to accept that that is the part of the cycle that we're in. Is Bitcoin is the punching bag right now. Bitcoin is the easiest way to continue to hammer, whether it's by the prediction markets or people trading IBIT. I do think a big part of it is them just wanting to get IBIT back to certain prices so people can reload at those prices and then continue, because that's the ETF game, right? The ETF game is we want predictable prices that we can continue to buy in over extended periods of time that will then reward us later, because that's the ETF way. The ETF way is we want long periods where we can get the same price so that we can profit more when it rises. Long periods of the same price so we can profit more when it rises. That's just how those companies function. That's how they're able to move so much capital in the first place, is because it becomes more predictable. So what is going to happen in Bitcoin is it's going to become more predictable. It's more susceptible to things like the prediction markets, which honestly, I'm going to start jumping on. I can't use Polymarket yet, so I'm going to have to use Kalshi first. But that is one where I'm starting to be really curious about that. And actually, just to round out the video, I'll go over and show you what I mean. Because it's kind of fascinating just to see this is where people are putting money besides the actual price. I don't think it shows me. Does it show me the actual volume on here? It says not all burritos and strippers, my friend. It's a great comment. I don't see where it has volume. That's a lot of comments, though. It's supposed to show me the amount of volume that is in. Maybe it just shows you on the phone. Whatever. Anyways, so this video has been great. Like and subscribe. So basically, if we think the price, and let's see how disjointed it is. We got 88.269 over here. Slightly higher over here. I think somebody told me that it's closer to the Coinbase chart, but pretty much what we'd be looking at for here is, take this contract, for example. If we think that the price in the next 30 minutes is going to close above 88.25, currently the market is really underpricing that. It's underpricing that quite a bit. So if you were to put in $100, you'd make $64 on that one, if you were correct about it staying above 88.25, which again, as we can see on the chart, that's where we are exactly. Oh no, it does not say 365. That's interesting. So there's definitely a discrepancy depending on which chart you're using. But if we were going to make decisions on exactly where that range is, we pretty much just want to take a look at the last couple of days and see, okay, what were the relative highs, what were the relative lows, and then that kind of gives us a range of 91 to 84, and it's not even going to give us the option really. It's only going to give us the spread of a couple points above and a couple points below. So the markets will reprice dramatically if we randomly shoot through these levels again, or if we get up here again. It'll be forced to. A lot of these contracts will become invalidated, and it'll have to shoot back over there. So this is just something I'm looking at as another way to be able to profit off of the price of Bitcoin without having to take option contracts on IBIT. This is also not quite 24 hours, but it's closer to 24 hours. Let me know in the comments if you have any experience with Kalshi or Polymarket already. It's definitely something that is newer to me. I've never used them, but if you've been following me on Threads for any period of time, you know I'm pretty good at guessing what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin, just because my very simple system using literally 3 indicators, one of which is volume. Volume is like the most basic indicator on the planet Neptune, and pretty much, you know, that's what I'm looking for. And that's what we're all looking for at the end of the day is how can I make money off of my Bitcoin without having to sell my Bitcoin? And I think the prediction markets actually provides, one of the most interesting answers to that, which is if my Bitcoin is not just money, if my Bitcoin is an idea, and I really want to hammer this in for a minute, if Bitcoin is the idea that the price will continue to consolidate and then expand and then give back and then expand, consolidate and give back before what? An expanse, a consolidation, and giving back again. We're going to continue to see that relative pattern where we fight for new highs, we give it back, we reclaim them, we give it back, we keep going lower. So my baseline case for what's going to happen in 2026, assuming all things go the way that they have been going for an extended period of time, is over here. We're going to continue. We'll have one more test of the weekly SMA, and the most likely case is we're going to fail it. So right here, we break above to the upside. What happened here? We broke above to the upside, but as it's sloping lower and we're below it, we just don't have good evidence that we're going to retest it again. So this would be a best case scenario. And I've talked about this level a bunch of times. This 106.7 is the fib pivot. 106.4 is close enough. That would be our absolute best case scenario to show us that we're about to hit another all-time high. Now, can it happen whenever? Yeah, it can, because you know what? A bunch of billionaires and oil tycoons can just decide that they want to put $40 billion into Bitcoin overnight, and nothing is preventing them from doing that. Nothing at all is preventing them from doing that. And that's where we're going to see a big supply shock at some point in the market, is because, the rich people are just going to wake up and realize, the dollar and everything else is losing value. I'm just going to park a ton of money in Bitcoin that I don't need tomorrow, And I think, there'll be other capital assets that are allowing for similar exposure to it where they don't have to take quite as much risk, but you don't have to pay fees on this guy. You don't have to pay fees on it. So that being said, I think that a lot of the money is going to just continue to flow into Bitcoin the same way that the ETFs do, where this will get less dramatic over time. Like this one, I don't expect us to go down to here, or I guess I kind of do. 39 to 54 is where I'm talking about is like the most reasonable, like proper ending. And like I said here with the anchored VWAP is still rising. And I would assume it's going to rise until probably in that range, that 39 to 54K range. And that's where we're actually going to interact with it. So to keep that in mind, as we're looking at the monthly SMA, over here, as you can see, we still have it until the end of the year where we touch it and chop. And again, this is what I said I think is going to happen, is we're just going to chop. We're going to chop between now and February, and we're probably going to give it back. Especially I've been talking about this since they announced it last year. That UFC fight at the White House, I think that is like the biggest bread and circus to try and get us like convinced that the markets are going to do well. And then that's going to be a huge sell signal for the markets, I think. I think the markets are just going to completely give up after that point, in July. I think that's going to be really the signal of like, it's just going to start dumping towards the end of the year, because if we're to assume it's going to happen the same way that it has in the past, then it's normally about a year from top to bottom. So this is November. Where's the bottom? Bottom is in December of the next year. So 13 months. Same thing for this guy over here. Where is the top? Top is December. Where is the bottom? Bottom is actually February of 2019 in that particular case, which that was my base case. for what I thought was going to happen going into 2026, actually. I thought what we were going to see is something similar to this, just a blow off top, and then we start to give it back into the end of the year. But we just haven't seen that. We saw our blow off top in October. But this is still my base case, is that everyone is assuming that 2026 is going to be the bottom. But I think it actually, and technically it was, for 2018. Technically that's a lower wick, and these are just lower candle closes. So it still adheres to the same rule. And in this case, I expect it'll probably be the same, where in October of 2026 will be the lowest wick, and then we'll just have to fight to reclaim that wick for November and December of next year. But that is my baseline case for what's going to happen. And just to round out, one of the reasons why I believe that is hyper likely is I'm JP Morgan Chase. I am starting to roll out crypto-backed loans to my clients, and I need the smart ones with a lot of money to want to buy them. So if I'm offering loans while Bitcoin is dropping from its highest point, why would I, as a customer, want to give you my asset that's losing value? Why would I want to do that? Not a good time for me to take out a loan. But if I am a customer and Bitcoin is over here and it's the lowest that it's going to go, well, not only am I going to take a ton of money that I now have in these stable coins that will be live by that point next year, and I'm going to park it in Bitcoin, because that Bitcoin now, I believe, is going to rise again because it's hit the levels that it needs to in order to be done with the selling pressure and start going in the opposite direction. So if I'm a person who I bought Bitcoin at 50K, or I bought it at 100K, and then I watched it go down and now I have less money, but I saw it at 50 and I said, you know what? I'm going to put in another 50 grand because I'm like that. I got that monopoly money, So you buy more of it at that point. You reduce your cost basis on what you lost over here. And now you have $75,000 worth of the asset, instead of, if you put 50 over here and 50 over here, you'd have whatever. You basically have halved your money, essentially. So that original 50 is worth 25. This new 50 is now worth 50 plus the 75. Now you only have to get back a little bit higher. I believe that's 70 or 80K for you to already be back at 100K, But by the time that you are at 100 again, now you're going to have $150,000 worth of capital, whereas over here, you only had $50,000 worth of capital, just by being able to ride out that swing without panicking, buying in more. And then what they'll do is, at that point, they've only put in $75,000, even though they lost a bunch here and they put in more here. And as it starts to rise again, as you already have $150,000 worth of capital at this point, what are they going to do? Well, they don't want to sell it, because they know, okay, we just started the new bull market. So what are the new prices that we're going to rise to? So what is the intelligent investor going to do? What is a rich person going to do? They're going to take out loans against it instead, so they don't have to sell it. So as the price continues to appreciate over time, this loan that I took out over here when Bitcoin was worth 50K, and I had to give them, X amount of my Bitcoin in order to have the loan, that loan gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to repay in terms of dollars to Bitcoin over that time. And most of them, I would assume, you're going to have to pay back in dollars. You're not going to have to pay back in Bitcoin. So your dollar amount that you have to pay back is going down in value over time, because what happens to the US dollar? It continues to go down in value, continues to get inflated over time. That's why we have Bitcoin in the first place. So this is one of the key strategies that you need to have in mind, is what are you doing with your Bitcoin stack? What are you prepared to do with your Bitcoin stack? Because a lot of people are just going to sell it here and then wait in stable coins and then rebuy it. And that's always a good plan. There's certainly nothing wrong with that plan. It's a great way for people to be able to continue to stack just based on, pretty much one trade every couple of years. They buy in when it's low and they sell when it's overvalued. And then they wait, and they do it again. I'm not convinced that that's going to continue to be as predictable as it was in the past. Even what I said about, the October 2022 being the bottom, or October 2026 being the bottom, I'm not the only one saying that. There's a lot of people who are saying that. There were a lot of people saying 130 to 150K for Bitcoin around here. So I think the more people believe that a certain outcome is going to happen, the more money that other people in the prediction markets and the derivatives markets can make from forcing that majority of people to be wrong. So this is why I personally don't sell my Bitcoin. I don't think I have enough of it where it makes sense for me to be playing this game versus just continue to stack it. And when the right company comes along where they're trustworthy enough to borrow against, which I hate to say that it's JP Morgan Chase, but I do believe that it's JP Morgan Chase. Like I just think that they're not going to lose your money. And when quantum does hit in the 2030s and it fucks up a ton of infrastructure around the world, Chase is one of the banks that's most likely to be secure in that instance. And I think that there's going to be a major flight of people from the smaller banks into the bigger banks at that time. That's a topic for another video, but that's kind of a broad overview of the signals that we need to pay attention to in the short term. Is, are we going to reclaim 94 to 96? Because if we don't, we're just going to continue to give up. We're just going to continue to fail. So on the 1 hour timeline, pay attention to that guy. 88.5-ish, which we already talked about. We talked about that as a Fibonacci pivot level on the 4 hour, I believe. Maybe it was the daily. It's one of the levels. All right, I'm ending this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.